Hi there. So today is our Stick It to Stress workshop day. It's going to be a pretty quick workshop, probably about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. We'll see how much rambling I do. But I'm thinking about 20 to 30 minutes, talking about what stress is, how it affects our overall health and weight loss, and then things we can do to minimize the negative effects of it. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and you can see the slides that I've got going on here. All right, so I'm just gonna arrange everything. Okay, oops. All right, thanks for bearing with me. Stick it to stress. I made this pretty little picture with the lovely colors. So what we're going to cover what is stress, because there's a couple different forms of it. And then we'll focus on the one form of stress that is the most detrimental to our overall health and weight loss. And then we'll talk about common sources and uncommon sources of stress, why stress is important, because I know that we often relate stress to be a negative word, a negative thing, but stress actually is important, and there's a reason why our body creates it. So we'll go into that a little bit, and then we will shift into when stress becomes a detriment to us and how to, the recovery steps, so how we can minimize the negative effects of it. So what is stress? Stress is a physiological response in the body. It's a natural response to a challenge of some sort. This can be a short-term response or a long-term response. If it's a short-term response, it's an adrenaline. So these are the two forms of stress. So there's adrenaline stress, and then there's cortisol stress. So those are the two hormones that are produced during times of stress. In a short-term stressful situation, it's adrenaline, and we all have heard about adrenaline, often in positive ways. Adrenaline rush is a common phrase. But adrenaline is the hormone that's released in a short-term stressful situation. So that stress could be a positive stress, like a bungee jump, for example, because it's fun and that's something that we want to do, but it gives us that little burst. Or it could be some sort of more negative situation, like you're in traffic and somebody cuts you off, or you get a little scare, maybe a deer runs out or something. That's also a short-term stress response, and adrenaline is released into the body. We're going to talk more in this workshop about the long-term stress hormone, which is called cortisol, and the long-term effects of stress. Excuse me. So stress can be an emotional response or a physical response or a combination of both. Sometimes we don't even know if we are in a state of stress. Often if it's a short-term state of stress, we do know because we feel that adrenaline. But if it's a longer sort of normal in our life state of stress, we don't often know it. When we do, then it can be intense or top of our mind, or if we are just kind of running along in this same sort of pattern that we always have, it can be more underlying and brewing beneath our conscious thought. And this is where it becomes a bit more challenging to recognize and to deal with it. But we're going to talk about some different ways that the body responds and the mind responds, so that you can identify with some of those things potentially and become aware of your stressful situation. Excuse me. So I've listed here some common sources of stress, and we'll kind of go from the most obvious to the least obvious. So we've got work, finances, personal illness or the illness of loved ones, home life, and that can involve so many things because we all have our own unique lives and our own unique home lives. So there can be multitudes of stressors there. Pathogens, so things kind of in our environment like mold, viruses, parasites, bacteria. These are all sorts of stressors on the body. And ones that we might not recognize that we have going on. So generally we know if we've got a virus, but if we have, say, mold is an exposure, or there's some sort of pathogen in our air that we don't necessarily know is there. Medication and drugs, although they are helpful in certain situations, it is a stress on our liver, and our liver's job is to constantly work at detoxifying our body. And so when we're taking medications and drugs, our liver is working to detoxify our body from this medication. And so it's working hard, and it's constantly working to detoxify. So if this is continual, it's a medication that you need to take continually, or it's drug use that is continuous, then it is a stressor on the body as well. Then there's digital stress, which it could be in our work life, it could be in our recreational life, but we are so very often on some sort of screen, whether it's TV, computer, phone, social media. If we're always turned on, it's a stressor on our body as well. It's a stressor on the brain. It's a stressor. Then we feel the difference if we've been in front of a screen for multiple hours in a day. We definitely feel the difference versus if we've been outside for multiple hours in a day. So digital stress is a form of stress as well. And then there are inflammatory foods, which towards the end, when we're talking about ways to overcome the detriment that stress can be, we'll talk about the difference between inflammatory foods and regular foods. But inflammatory foods can be a stressor on the body too, like sugar, gluten potentially, dairy potentially, depending on what your body's reactions are to these things. So paying attention to our food allergies and sensitivities is quite important. If we notice that we have certain negative reactions to certain foods, they may be causing inflammation in the body and therefore causing stress on our nervous system, on our system as well. And then high intensity exercise. Yes, the fitness instructor is saying that high intensity exercise is a stress on the body. It is not always a negative stress on the body. So in order to overcome any situation, we do go through times of stress, but where it becomes a detriment is when that stress becomes chronic and becomes very lengthy. So when I'm talking about high intensity exercise here, I'm talking about extreme, prolonged times, so 60 minutes or more of intense, even 30 minutes or more for some of us, of intense exercise causes a stress on the body that isn't very positive. Or if we're doing these types of exercises 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week, and it really, that does depend on the body, because every human is capable of or conditioned to do different amounts of high intensity exercise. So this is when it's important to check in and feel what feels right to you. Speaking from experience though, I can say that we kind of get lost in a habit, say, for example. So I used to do 5, 6, 7 days of high intensity exercise every week, which feels great in the moment because you're getting those adrenaline bursts and those other positive hormones that are coming to you. But over time, and this is kind of what we're talking about, is stress over time causes a detriment. So high intensity exercise is also one of those things. Earlier I was saying that stress isn't always a bad thing. So there is a reason our body creates stress. It is important for us. We need stress for survival. It's part of our instincts, and in small amounts, it's actually a good thing. So some of the positive things that stress can offer us, or that stress does for us, is it triggers us to know when something is wrong and when we need to change a situation. It can motivate us to make that change. So in a short term, it triggers us to know when something's wrong and we need to change. So if we're going on a hike, for example, and we see a bear, we don't necessarily want to walk towards that bear or that dangerous situation. We're going to get a boost of stress and we're going to change whatever needs to happen to change that situation. Then it can also be motivating us to make a change in our lives. So say, for example, we go through this workshop today and you recognize certain things in your life that don't feel great. There is a little bit of realization or a little bit of stress there to motivate you to make that change, because you're like, oh, well, this isn't actually good for my body for this various reasons, or for my overall well-being, or for my mental health. That will motivate you to make a change. It's also called a challenge response, which in short term is healthy and necessary. So this is the big distinction in this whole workshop, is to recognize when stress is a short term, which isn't a bad thing, it's actually a good thing, versus when it's a long-term chronic stress situation. That's when we need to make these adjustments. Stress also helps to boost our memory and allowing us to think more clearly and act more efficiently. So in those stressful moments and stressful times, whether it's walking through the woods or whether it's dealing with a loved one or your own sort of illness, it's important to be able to think more clearly, to make effective decisions and get through that moment in the most effective way. It also strengthens our immune system in the short term, because when we are in a stressful situation, our body's response is to prepare us for the potential infection or illness that may come from being in that stressful situation. So it gives our immune system a little boost. So this is where we're going to head into the non-healthy versions of stress. So chronic stress, which is prolonged periods of stressful times, is absolutely not healthy on our physical or our mental body. Cortisol is the body's long-term stress hormone, and this stress hormone can cause us long-term issues if we are constantly producing it without fleshing it out and finding our balances. Some of the symptoms of stress that you may have found in the past, or you have maybe seen in others, I've kind of put them into different categories here. So body stressors, effects you'll notice on your mood and effects you'll notice in your behavior. So when we go through this list here, you may very well recognize and can relate to these ones in these categories. So we can notice different things in our bodies. So headache, muscle tension, overall fatigue and insomnia, upset stomach, and frequent illness. So these are our body's ways of letting us know that, and this is just a few, there's many more, but I just kind of picked the most common ones and the most obvious ones, that these are our body's ways of letting us know that something is not awesome and let's look at changing it. In our mood, we could notice anxiety or a general feeling of overwhelm, like everything just feels like a really big deal because you're already working at such a high level of stress that any other thing that's put onto there is just, it feels like too much. This can create irritability and anger and sadness and depression. In our behaviors, it can create over or under eating, depending on the situation or what our tendencies may be. Social withdrawal kind of goes with that general overwhelm. When you're working at such a high level, it's another thing, especially if you're not a person that is 100% comfortable in social situations. If it takes some work to be in a social situation, then you're already working at a high level. To try and do something extra like that just feels like too much. Could potentially cause outbursts, which kind of goes with the irritability and the anger. And also excess alcohol and drug use are potential symptoms of stress as well. So the correlation between stress and fat storage, I'll just kind of go into a couple of the ways that this could look and how this could play out in your body. So cortisol, which I mentioned is the long-term stress hormone in the body, affects our endocrine system, and that's also known as our adrenal glands, which is responsible for hormone production in the body. So when our adrenal glands are creating cortisol constantly, they need progesterone. So that's the hormone that's needed to create cortisol. So the more cortisol that's needed, the more progesterone is needed, and therefore progesterone gets depleted. And the progesterone is the hormone in the body that balances out estrogen. And when we have an excess of estrogen, it can often lead to weight gain. So for those of us that are 40 and above, this can be added as well, because naturally over time our progesterone levels lessen anyway, which is when we often notice that the estrogen becomes a bit higher and the weight gain becomes a bit more common or easier to obtain. So when we have so much cortisol that's constantly needing production, like I said, we need more progesterone to create that. And when the progesterone is being used in this way, it isn't then being used to balance out our estrogen levels, which can cause weight gain. And another way that the fat storage can happen or the weight gain can happen is insulin is another hormone. And so creating unstable blood sugar or unstable insulin levels creates insulin resistance over time, which means that the body is constantly producing insulin over and over and over and over and over and over, more than it needs to necessarily. And that's how the chronic stress and the insulin resistance go together, which when we're insulin resistant, it can also increase our fat storage, especially in the midsection of the body as well. So what do we do? All that doom and gloom, I will not leave you with that. There are ways, there are things we can do. So I've outlined 3 different kind of points to look at and things that we can do, and then a following 3 in how we can support those initial 3. So first of all, we need to remove or significantly reduce these stressors. So this is, it sounds 150 million times easier than it actually is, especially if the stress or this chronic stress has been going on for so long. It's often very it can be difficult to identify what these stressors are. However, in order to actually rectify the situation, this is what needs to happen. So tune in to yourself, notice when you're in a certain situation, or when certain things happen, or just be very self-aware of you, your responses, your environment, and how you respond to your environment, and notice when you feel those sensations inside your body. Maybe it's in your stomach, maybe it's in your chest, maybe you get a headache instantly. I know somebody who instantly gets a headache when they're in a stressful situation. So notice these things within your body, and that will help identify these stressors, and then you can work at some problem solving and some strategies to either remove them or reduce them significantly. I mean, some stressors in our lives we can't remove. We all have work, we all have home lives, that often these things that cause stress can't be removed altogether, but what can be adjusted or what can be reduced in order to make it a healthier environment for you. And then very likely, if it's a work or a home situation where you're with other people, it can very often affect those other people in a positive way too, if you're able to create a more positive situation for yourself as well. So this does take time, and it does take attention. Supporting the adrenal glands, so that's that endocrine system, because they're responsible for the hormone production, they're responsible for cortisol and adrenaline, they're responsible for our blood pressure management, our metabolism, and our immune system. And we'll go into some ways a couple slides down, and how we can support our adrenal system. And rest. So rest is especially important, not only just for nighttime sleeping, but for in those moments. And maybe it's just 5 or 10 minutes if you're in a moment that feels like a high stressful situation, and you are able to take a moment to yourself, take a moment away, practice some breathing, doing something in the moment that you recognize, or shortly after, or even later in the day if you're not able to do it in the moment. Because rest is going to be number 1. It's your body is fighting a war inside. That war is affecting you physically, it's affecting you mentally, it's affecting you emotionally, and so your body needs to recoup. And once the actual physical body can rest, the mind can rest, the soul can rest. It can all have an effect on each other. So 3 key ways that we can support these 3 ways in this process. And you'll be happy to know that you're probably doing quite a few of these already, so yay. Number 1, nutrition. Of course, Kobe says number 1 is nutrition. So on here, I've put some on the left-hand side. You can see there is an X. On the right-hand side, you can see there's a check. So these are different ways that these certain types of foods are affecting your body. So the ones on the left-hand side are foods that are inflammatory foods. So they're providing extra stress on the body. So when you have these external stresses in your life, you're now, if you're having these things on the left-hand side category, then you're adding extra inflammation to the body, which causes more stress on top of what's already existing in there. So I'm sure nothing on this list surprises you. As you read through, you're probably like, oh yeah, that makes sense. All the things that I shouldn't eat. And this doesn't mean that you should never eat these things. It's just more information to make us aware of how these things affect us. And when we look at a lot of these things, we associate them with weight gain or with calories, or, with that superficial, more superficial areas. But then when we think about how it relates to stress and our mental health as well, there's many more layers when it comes to that. And like I said, I mean, I'm not saying don't ever have any of these things. I myself love a lot of these things, but it's about recognizing what their effects are in the body and making conscious choices from there. So refined carbohydrates and sugars. And when I say refined carbohydrates, these are the white foods. So the ones that have been processed, like the white rice where part of the grain has been taken away, or white flours, same thing, the grains. And those basically all the white foods, other than dairy, but the processed ones, processed and artificial foods and preservatives, so with extra artificial flavors and things like that are chemically produced rather than naturally produced. Trans fat and rancid fats. Rancid fats just means fats that are old and have gone bad. So this could be a healthy fat like an olive oil or something, but it's just been in the cupboard for too long. It has that off sort of smell. It's creating inflammation in the body, which is an extra stressor. And then trans fats, which are the fats that are produced in the factory. So fats themselves as a whole are not bad, but I mean, like I'm always saying, we want to eat a healthy source of fat, but when it's a trans fat, it's not a natural source. And when it's rancid, that's a natural source potentially that just has gone off now. Coffee and caffeine. So I love my coffee. So I'm not saying that don't drink it, but if you notice that when you do drink it, it's actually creating you more stress than good. Like if you start to get a heightened heart rate, or your breathing starts to become higher, or you feel that sense of anxiety in your gut, like if you're noticing negative effects from it, it's something to look at because caffeine triggers our adrenal glands to produce more cortisol. So cortisol is constantly being produced in your body and it's an issue already. The caffeine is just going to add to that. And same with alcohol as well. And then at the bottom, it just says food sensitivities and allergies, and that varies between all of us. So just recognizing, excuse me, recognizing where your sensitivities and allergies lie. Allergies are pretty obvious because you have some sort of response to it. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. You have some sort of your throat closes up, or you know what I mean. But then there's food sensitivities where maybe you've always responded that way to dairy, or maybe you've always responded that way to gluten and haven't really looked into that. But once we start recognizing a bit more and tapping into more of how our body reacts to certain foods, then we can recognize maybe which ones aren't supporting us as much. And then on the right hand side, all the foods that do support us, I'm sure once again doesn't surprise you. The things that I always am spouting off to eat. So essentially it's creating that complete and three meal, which I'm often talking about. So you're creating a plate full of vegetables and healthy fats and proteins. And all of these things are going to support you, support your body as it's nurturing itself back into health away from the stress. So the whole foods and grains would be the opposite of the refined ones. So these are finding the foods in their whole form, the brown rice instead of the white rice, for example. Fresh vegetables, because that provides us with not only the fiber, which is going to help with our hunger levels, but it also gives us the nutrients and the vitamins and minerals that will support our system as we are recognizing and supporting our adrenals through the stressful situations. Healthy fats and protein, as I mentioned, lots of water. So we've talked about this many, many times, and we all know we're supposed to drink water, but here is another great reason to drink it. It helps to detoxify us. It helps with everything in the body, but it helps the liver do the detoxification process and rid the body of the inflammatory chemicals or the inflammatory foods that we have been eating. It helps to rid the body of those kind of things to keep us running well. And then when it comes to salting our food, salt is beneficial when had in some, in a good balanced form. And then looking at the quality of the salt. So a more, just like every other food, a more natural source of that salt is going to be good. So regular table salt, it has gone through a lot of chemical processes, but when we're looking at a good quality sea salt or Himalayan salt, it's going to support us more. And the second one is a few different supplement options will support our body. during times of stress or depletion, or when we're trying to regenerate from times of stress. So we've got B complex, which is responsible for energy production and metabolism, and is also essential in stress hormone production. So that will help the body get the stress hormones balanced out again. Vitamin C is a great antioxidant, supports our immune system, and is also helping, it is key in the production of cortisol as well. And then magnesium, which many people are deficient in this if they're eating a standard North American diet. And by that, I mean, heavy in the carbs, not as much vegetables, not as much proteins and things like that. So when we're going back to the previous slide where we talked about eating complete in 3, we would be getting more magnesium. But if you're feeling like you might not be getting enough magnesium, then that's something that you could be adding in as well. It's essential for muscle and nerve function. So it has the ability to calm us down and regulate our blood sugar and metabolism. So if we're feeling like we're at that heightened state of stress all the time, magnesium will kind of help to reduce that for us and help to calm us. And last slide, a few lifestyle things to note. So things that you can do, behaviors that you can, or practices that you can take on to help with the regeneration of yourself during stressful times too. Mindfulness. So this kind of goes back to the first one when I said to identify and reduce your stressors. So to be mindful and recognize when things are triggering our stress. This carries with you throughout the day. So how often are you triggered? Are you always triggered by that same thing? Understanding your body and its response to the environment is the best way to get to know yourself and make these changes. So really carrying out your day in a mindful way and recognizing how you respond to different things. Something that I found extremely helpful is breathing exercises. And if you're on my Instagram, you can go to one of the Instagram lives. I'll put it in the comments in here too. I'll just tag that Instagram live because I go through 2 or 3 different breathing exercises to help bring us back to the moment and to help with our nervous system, to calm our nervous system down. Meditation is a great way to reset our nervous system. And I know if you're like me, I hear that word and I think, oh God, it's so hard. Meditation's so hard. But I think when I used to believe that meditation was hard, I used to believe meditation was a certain thing. I used to believe that meditation was, I would sit on a pillow on the ground, close my eyes, empty my brain, not think about anything else, and just breathe. And to me, that was impossible. Like, I didn't know how I could possibly sit for a lengthened period of time. For one thing, my body doesn't like sitting for lengthened periods of time. And for another, how could I empty my mind for that long? So I have since retrained my brain to realize what meditation actually is. Essentially, it's taking a moment away. And whatever that looks like for you, it's taking a moment away. Meditation can simply be sitting and listening to a lovely song. It can be going for a walk and appreciating the nature around you. It doesn't have to be sitting down, breathing, and emptying your brain, because that, I don't know about you, but that sounds very overwhelming to me, and I just don't know how to do that very well. Sometimes for sure, but not all the time. So recognizing that meditation comes in so many different forms, and the more you practice it in what is accessible to you in that moment, for example, going for a walk or listening to a song, the more it becomes a regular part of your way and your system. And you can potentially, if this feels good to you, end up sitting down for a half an hour and having your brain empty and just breathe. It doesn't have to be where you start though, and it doesn't even have to be where you go. It's essentially just something that's going to reset the nervous system. It's going to make you feel good. And there's a couple apps here, and if I'm honest, I haven't used them. I've heard good things about them, but I haven't used them myself. But Calm or Headspace, they have guided meditations in there and meditation suggestions in there. So you are welcome to check those out as well. Another thing that's really helped me is a regular gratitude practice. And this also is super simple. I wake up in the morning, I take 5 deep belly breaths, and with each breath, I think about 5 things that I'm grateful for. And sometimes those things are this bed I'm laying in, this pillow under my head, the water I'm going to drink when I get up. Like, it could be so simple. It doesn't have to be huge things that you're grateful for. Of course, those are great too, if those are what's come to your mind. But if it's hard, especially when this practice is just beginning, if it's hard to think of things at the beginning, the little things that you take for granted are the things that really made a big difference to me. The fact that my car runs and it takes me to where I need to go. The fact that I have shoes without holes in them and I can go for a walk if I want to. I drank a smoothie before we started and I think there's a berry seed stuck in my throat. Excuse me. So yeah, gratitude practices also don't have to be complicated. They can get to be more, but they can start off super simple. Start off your day with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. I tend to end my day in the same way with those 5 belly breaths. Each breath represents a different thing that I'm grateful for. And sometimes it's the exact same things. Sometimes it's the same things in the morning as it was in the evening. And this number 5 sounds so simple, but it's so important and it's so often overlooked. I think, especially as people that often are looking after others, we don't put ourselves in priority. We don't put ourselves on the list of finding something we enjoy, something that lights you up, whatever that is, the simplest thing. Maybe you love pulling your kids in the wagon. Just saying, there's so many things out there that potentially can light you up or bring you joy. And it can be something big, it can be something small. It can be the fact that you get to sit down and watch Netflix in the evening after you're done all the things that you're supposed to do. Or maybe it's your morning coffee in peace and stillness. Maybe it could be so many different things, and each one of us is so individual. But I encourage you, and it kind of goes along with number 1 is mindfulness, is recognizing those things that we enjoy. So recognizing response, as I was saying before, recognizing the stress response, but on the other end, also recognizing the joy response. When you're doing something and it just, you feel lighter, or you feel more expansion in your chest, or a little bit of excited butterflies in your belly, or whatever your joyful response happens to be. If you can find something that brings you that joyful response, that great feeling inside, whatever that feels like for you, that is going to be a huge thing to turn around your stressful situations. So when you find something that lights you up, it sets a whole different pattern in the nervous system. And the more you can do that, the quicker that pattern resets, and you're able to get through or get over stressful situations. And as mentioned before, rest, especially if you are at the end of your rope, especially if you've been dealing with chronic stress for so very long and you haven't been able to flush out that cortisol and you haven't been able to do any resets. Sometimes you just gotta lie down, sit down, say no to something, especially if you're at that burnout point, because I'm sure we've all recognized what that feels like when you're at burnout point. Nothing sounds good. Nothing sounds accomplishable. Everything feels like a chore. Ultimately, you need to take care of you. So if you're at the point where you're in burnout mode and everything just feels garbage, 1, find something that lights you up, even if it's just a little flicker, even if right at the beginning it's just a little flicker. Continue to do that, and that flicker will grow into more of a flame. Look after yourself, essentially. That's what it comes down to. We need to prioritize ourselves, recognize when we need a break, when we need to say no, when we need to turn inward, when we need to make ourselves a priority, whether that priority is the food you're intaking, taking a moment to do a breathing exercise, taking a moment to do a meditation, finding 5 things you're grateful for, all of the above. Turn inward and allow yourself the reset. And yes, it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. It really depends on how far you are in depletion mode to get back, but it's not a forever. It's nothing is forever. So whoa, that was a whole thing. So rest essentially is where that was coming from. Rest is incredibly important. Whatever rest looks like for you, it's essential, especially if it's go all the time. Take those moments out, go in, recognize what you need, recognize what lights you up. Find something that calms you down and lights you up. This is your life, and stress shouldn't be allowed to rule it. Allow yourself to practice things that make you happy. And if it seems so far out of reach, start small. One little step, whatever that looks like. And every step brings more momentum, and that shift will happen because you deserve it and you need it. So I hope that was helpful, and I don't even know how long it was because I wasn't timing myself, but maybe we're at 30 minutes. I hope I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions about any of that, or if you have comments, or if you want to start a discussion, the group is a great spot for that. So questions or comments you can put in the comments below this video. But if you want to start a discussion of some sort, I don't know what that is, but maybe something triggered when I said that for you, put in the group, start a discussion of some sort, because I would love for us to connect when it's important to connect, because we're all here to be together and to support each other. So when we can do that, even if it's in the virtual space and we've never actually met each other, it's important because we can make connections, and it doesn't have to be face to face. It doesn't have to be in somebody's space. We can make connections here in the group. So if you ever have questions or want to start a discussion, this is a great spot for it. Thank you so much, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.